On Central, we shall discover what's cooking in the Farmhouse Kitchen.
Some people tell me that they don't feel they've had a proper meal unless it's been meat and 2 veg. But health-wise, it's good for the system to have meatless days. And that's what Claire Connery and I have got for you today. I'm very glad to have you with me again, Claire.
Hello, Grace. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure.
What I brought with me is something to go with your meatless days. There's such a tremendous selection of salad vegetables in the shops now. It's a pity to forget about them. And also there's so many beautiful vegetables that you can make them into interesting tarts and flans and all sorts of healthy, nutritious dishes. And what I've got is 2 flans, one using wholemeal pastry with cheese and onion. And that's in the recipe book and is absolutely delicious. And don't believe what people say about wholemeal being sort of tough and heavy. It's not, and this is lovely. Having said that, I'm going to show you how to make a courgette flan using the plain rich shortcrust pastry with a filling of tomato and onion. That's a variation of the recipe that's in your book. And I've made a baby one for you because I think it looks so attractive with all these lovely leaves and very good for a starter or for a light snacky lunch. And the leaves I have, you can see in my bowl. I mean, look at the wonderful colour. They're absolutely tremendous. And I've put a few flowers in as well.
Edible, of course.
Of course, yes. And I've used the salad leaves as a base for 3 sort of snack dishes. This one uses feta cheese with bacon and a light sort of flavoured vinegar dressing, which is served hot. Then this one uses the Stilton cheese with tomatoes on French bread cut at an angle with a mixed salad again. A little more expensive perhaps, but just as good, is a citrus fruit salad with some avocado pear and maybe some smoked fish or smoked meat, just tiny little slivers. Although it's expensive, it goes a long way because you don't have to use much.
Very attractive too, just a little effort and it makes it a really beautiful lunch or, as you say, a snack dish.
And I have a super selection of all these to let you have a look at.
Good. Well, if you'd like to get started in the kitchen, I'll show you what I'm going to do today. Mine has a rather oriental flavour, and here a beautiful cashew nut curry. Wonderful texture and lovely rich curry flavour. With it, basmati rice, the white one here, and with it a lentil and rice dal it is actually, and it's very delicious, much cheaper, and goes beautifully with this nut curry I have there. Over here, you've probably had cucumber raita. Well, this is a corn raita, wonderfully cooling mixture of yogurt and sweet corn with some cumin seeds on the top, which have been toasted a little bit to give a wonderful flavour. And lastly, an onion salad, raw onion it is, but believe me, it is perfectly delicious once it's had its soaking in lemon juice and some of the other spices. Now let me just tell you where to find today's recipes if you like to follow what we're doing from the book. Nearly all of them appear in this big hardback today, the Complete Farmhouse Kitchen Cookbook, which has the complete collection of the earlier recipes you may know from the first books, there are 3 of them here. We've made at least 4 other books since then, and this one here, of course, is our best-selling microwave book, and its partner, the new microwave and freezer book. And one of my absolute favourites, Cooking for 1 and 2, over here, and its partner at the back here, a printed version in big print for people with visual difficulties. Now Claire, I'm sure, is just about ready to start her rich shortcrust pastry for her courgette tart.
And it's the rich shortcrust pastry without the sugar in it, because after all it is a savoury tart. And what I'm using for it is 4 ounces of plain white flour. You can see I'm also using a food processor, which makes this particular pastry special. Because I know a lot of people find it difficult to know how to make pastry that's short and crisp and really very good and tasty. But if you use the processor the right way, you'll find that there's no difficulty at all. And if you watch what I'm going to do, you should be able to make pastry in the mixer without any difficulty. And it doesn't matter whether it's the same processor as I have or the one that you have at home. So that's the 4 ounces of plain flour, a pinch of salt, and I'm using 2 ounces of vegetable margarine. That's the solid fat, not the soft one. That's the yellow one here. And I'm using ½ an ounce of the white vegetable fat, not lard. And that will give you a very good short result. And that's why I like to use the combination. Now, once those are in the bowl, you put your lid on, whatever it is, and the trick here is to remember that you actually pulse the machine or turn the lid on and off as you're making it, so that you're not going to have it going very quickly and turning into a cake mixture, which can so easily happen. So I've got a pulse button here, and this is just what happens. So just pulse it like that until you get a mixture which resembles breadcrumbs. There we are, just almost like breadcrumbs. And the next thing is to add the liquid. Now, generally in processor books it will tell you to add the liquid through the funnel that we have here. Just drop it in that way. But I find it much more satisfactory if you add your liquid on top of the mixture that you've made and just sprinkle it over the top. So I've got 1 egg, size 3, not the whole egg, just the yolk, and that's sprinkled over the top with a tablespoonful of water, and the two have been mixed together. Put the lid back on and process again using the pulsing button until it's just starting to change tone. If you listen very carefully, you might just catch it. There, did you catch it? It's almost there. Now, this is what I want it. I don't want it held together in a lump just yet. I just want it so that it will fall out onto the table in bits, and you can scrape out the little extra bits. Then you work with that very lightly with your hands, a little bit of flour on the top, plain flour again, and just work that into a dough until you're ready to actually roll it. I've taken the time and I've rolled it out because it takes just a few minutes. Roll it slightly larger than your flan tin. I'm using a metal quiche tin, just like this. It's an 8-inch tin. Roll your pastry over the rolling pin and then try to work out exactly where it's going to go and then lift it in. Then lift round the sides very carefully. Now, if it breaks, as this is doing in places, because I've had it sitting for a little while, you just mould it. This is the lovely thing. Because it's rich, because your proportion of fat is quite high to the proportion of flour, you actually can mould it together. You see how easy it is. You just press it as you go. The idea being that you keep the rim of your pastry case the same all the way around. Now, that's not quite looking as elegant as it should do. And you see there's a bit that's broken. Just press that, or take a little bit of pastry, press it in the top, and then press up the sides. Now then you take your time, working your fingers and hands right round it until you get it even all the way round. Now let's not just look at that one. Let's go on and look at what it should look like when you've taken time to make it, which is this one here. Do you see how even it is? And what I did just before I finished it was to run a very sharp knife just round the edge so that you get a lovely flat edge. Now, when you're making the flan, it's best to fill it, to line it with beans. First of all, some baking beans, just like that. These are ceramic beans, and they're wonderful because they don't deteriorate. If you don't want to spend the money on those, you can use butter beans. That goes into the oven then and is baked blind at 190 degrees centigrade, 370 degrees Fahrenheit, which is gas mark 5, and it cooks for about 8 to 10 minutes until it's coloured. Then you take it out of the oven, take the beans out again, put it back in for another 8 to 10 minutes until it's dried out all the way through and golden brown. Here's one that's finished, and I've made a slight variation to the recipe. Plain courgettes, but this time I've added some tomato, about a tablespoonful of onion, tomatoes with the seeds out and chopped, spread just over the top, and a little fresh basil, finely chopped and sprinkled over. There's a bit of garlic in there too. I fried it when I fried the onion. And then your courgettes sliced wafer thin, and they go over the top in a lovely pattern. Now, you can use the big courgettes, you can use the small courgettes. Obviously, you want to try and tone it down depending on the size of the flan that you're using. When I make the little courgettes like this, I've got the little flans like this, I use the baby courgettes, which are ever so sweet. You've got different sizes, so it's up to you as to what you want to use. Then once you've got your filling in, and here it is, I've got all my courgettes nicely prepared, you make up your custard mixture. 2 eggs this time, size 3 again, 1/4 of a pint of natural yogurt, low fat, and pop that in. You can use cream, you can use sour cream. It's entirely up to you, but I think it gives a lovely, fresh, rich taste if you use the natural yogurt. Season that with salt if you like, little milled pepper. Make sure it's beaten well, otherwise you'll end up with it not coming out. And then just drizzle that over the top. See how thick it can be. You've got to do this slowly. And then you can take a spoon to it and let it just crinkle down all the way over. It will find its own level without pulling up the courgettes. And then once that's over all the way, Then you take some cheese. I've got about an ounce of cheddar. Mix that with a little parmesan if you like, which comes in the block and grates very easily, and then just sprinkle the cheese right over the top. Put that into the oven. This time you're going to cook it at slightly lower temperature. It's 180 degrees centigrade, 350 degrees Fahrenheit and gas mark 4, and that takes 25 to 30 minutes to cook. And then when it comes out, it's lovely and crispy, golden brown, and it serves beautifully with the crisp salad leaves that I showed you earlier. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about now. And don't they look absolutely wonderful? Here I have the cos lettuce, which is the sort of firmer variety. Beneath it I've got green Batavia, red Batavia, which is very nice, tastes a bit like eating some grass. Then I've got the old favourite, the iceberg, which is a wonderful filler. I've got radici, which is the red lettuce, which gives that lovely spark of colour to whatever you're doing. Little gems here, these tiny little, almost like little hearts of lettuce, which are appearing on the supermarket shelves. And I have red chicory, the lollopy old round lettuce, which we've been growing in the garden for years, and some lamb's lettuce, which perhaps most unusual. It's lovely little floppy bits, which are very nice. Chinese leaves, and right round at the front, we've got one of my favourites, which is the Lolla Rosa, which is this wonderful frilly edge. And then this one, which is oak leaf, which you couldn't possibly miss because it looks just like oak leaves. And I've flowers there, which the colour is wonderful and mixed through it. When they're edible, looks so attractive. Now, because you may be using some of these leaves, which are perhaps a little expensive, and you may not want to buy too many of them or use them a full salad made out of them, what I use is a base of perhaps the Chinese leaves or the iceberg lettuce, because it fills it up and packs it out. And I just break that off or else cut it with a knife into fairly large pieces and then break it with my fingers. And then into that I'm going to put some bits of the others, all washed of course and spun in a salad spinner or patted on a cloth. This is the Lolla Rosa, frilly edged and pink, really lovely. Don't have to use all I've got in the bowl. Then I've got some of the radici, this lovely pink colour, spot it through it, you can add some at the end, and the oak leaf, tear it up, leave it whole, just decide the size of the pieces that you want. And then what have I got here? I've got some watercress, pop that through as well, and some lamb's lettuce. Just take the little root end off the lamb's lettuce and then sprinkle that in. And to finish with, the frisee, which is slightly tart, bitter, sharp flavour, and that's very good as well. And that's all tossed in, and if you can, you get it into a big bowl and you do toss it up. I'm afraid I use my hands quite a lot in cooking, and if they're clean, I'm sure they're just as good as these old wooden fellows. And then put the flowers on at the end. Now, I'm not going to put them on just yet because I want to make a salad dressing, a basic French dressing or vinaigrette as it's called, and I use 3 parts oil, a very good vegetable oil or olive oil, which I prepare, some vinegar, 1 part vinegar to the 3 parts oil. That can be any sort of vinegar, a cider vinegar, whatever. A little mustard, French or normal mustard made up, pinch of salt to cut the oil, and some Lowell's black pepper, plenty of that to give the flavour. I always make this in a screw-topped jar because then I can go like this, and I can shake it up, get a nice emulsification. It's a wonderful colour here because it's a very good quality olive oil. And then a little drizzling of that right over the salad. Hello, Grace. You see what I'm up to?
I'm going to put the flowers
I'm just, well, I should really toss it first of all. And I'm told that the boss in the house is the one that tosses it. So a good toss.
Lovely colours
And
too.
then the flowers in the top. There's your beautiful salad.
Just
go with
marvellous.
all the other things that I showed you. A wonderful base for the salads I showed earlier.
Really lovely. And now I'll start my very different meatless meal with cashew nut curry, one of Priya Wikramasinghe's delightful recipes and a favourite in our family too. Now there are 6 lovely Indian spices in this curry, but first of all I must start with the nuts, which are over here. In the bowl I've been soaking 8 ounces of lovely broken cashew nuts in 1.5 pints of water. Now I just wanted you to look at these lovely ones, but they are just about twice the price, so do look for the broken ones, which are that bit cheaper. 1.5 pints of water, and in the recipe actually, for about 3 or 4 hours by the way, in the recipe Priya suggests that you put in half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda as well. Well, that's just another device to make them swell up even more. But in fact, I haven't done that. But if you did put the bicarb, you'd have to rinse it off at that point under the tap. So we'll bring that over here near to the spices that I'm going to use. Now here are the first three here. 2 little pieces of cinnamon bark, that's the little brown ones, and 2 cardamom seeds, and they've got their green jackets on, which will come off when I start grinding them, and 2 whole cloves. All of these were ground down in my pestle mortar here, and it's quite hard work to do it actually. Maybe that's why many of my Indian friends are all so slim. So there it is all ready for putting in with the other things in the pan. And over here is the pan I'm doing it in. I've got 8 ounces of onion, which I've browned really well. And one of our Indian guests was chiding me for not browning the onions really well to get really good flavour, so be sure you do that. 8 ounces of onion, a tablespoon of oil until they're nicely coloured. One other point, if you're keen on Indian cooking, it's worth hanging on to a spoon and keeping it separate, because not only has it got a yellow colour, it does smell of curry. So into this go my ground spices, and we'll give that a little stir, and the rest of the spices are here. 1.5 teaspoons of ground coriander, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, and 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, ground turmeric, and 1 teaspoon of salt. So all of that go in. We'll give that a good stir round and let that just cook away just for a second or two while I show you the next ingredient, which is creamed coconut. Now you can buy that quite cheaply in the supermarket. It's a wee bit like lard, and it's just the coconut flesh all mashed together. 1 ounce of that crumbled up, 4 fluid ounces of water, and boiling water if you can. Stir it round, and that is the liquid part of this sauce. So we'll pour that in now and stir. It doesn't matter if it doesn't melt right away, because it's going to have 15 minutes cooking. So into that now go my cashew nuts, which have swelled up quite considerably. I was quite surprised the first time I did that. I hadn't really heard about that idea, and it is a very good tip. So stir that round, turn the heat down, lid on for about 15 minutes or until it's bubbling and lovely, just like that. And there it's ready now for the rice. Now you saw me bringing something from the microwave. That was 1/2 pound of dry rice, which I cooked long ago, and about 3 weeks ago, and put in these bags, and I can't get the bag open. Here it is. And I've reheated it in just 3 minutes, and it reheats very, very beautifully. And this is the way it looks when it's in its frozen state. So push that to one side so that you can make a lovely nest in the middle for the cashew nut curry, and there you have it. A wonderful textured curry, which is really very, very delicious indeed. There we are. Now I'm going on to do Priya's other recipe, which is lentil rice, which also goes very nicely with this curry, and it's a lot cheaper. Mung dal is actually the most commonly used lentil in Asian cooking, and this is it here, that bright yellow. It's a bit like our split pea, isn't it? But in fact, that's the dried version of mung beans. That's the green ones, which you buy in the supermarkets. But in fact, these are the commercial ones, and this is what they look like when you buy them, when you do them yourself. Sprout them, I mean. So for the recipe, I'm using 1/2 cup of the mung dal and 1/2 cup of brown rice. Now they both went into a bowl to soak for a couple of hours until they swell up. But in fact, I also forgot to tell you to look over the lentils and make sure there aren't any little stones in, which they occasionally are. Now in the pan here, I've already got to the stage of the browning stage, and 8 ounces of onion, which I've browned in a tablespoon of oil. Now to that, I want to add the spices, and here they are. 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1/2 teaspoon of ground turmeric, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon, these little balls there, are mustard seed, and that's the kind that we use when we're pickling, so you know what I mean. So we'll give that a stir round, and then to that I want to add the drained rice and mung dal. There we are. We'll give it a shake and stir it in. Now in the recipe, Priya says to stir this over a low heat for about 10 minutes, 5 minutes I should say. Well, we haven't time to do that, so we're just going to assume that it's had that time and put in the liquid, but I'll give it a little stir before I go over. Now because this is going to cook by the absorption method, that means I have to use the same measure of liquid, and that's boiling water. So I want 2 cupfuls of boiling water to go into that pan. So that's one and another one. So that when this has been on cooking for about 20 minutes or so, all that liquid should have absorbed into the rice and the lentils, and it should be just right. And it's the texture we're looking for is actually just lovely, cooked, but not so mushy as you would imagine. Now the lid goes on that, and this is the way it looks when it gets to that stage. Can you see that? Just perfect for serving. So I'll take it over here, put that heat off, and put it into my dish, and that is lentil rice. There we are, and that wonderful colour too, isn't it nice? And it goes beautifully with lots of other curries as well. So we'll put that pan down, and I'll tell you that next thing I'm going to do is my version of the onion salad recipe that Priya gave us again. It's very delicious flavour. Now I say it's my version of this onion salad because I've reduced the fresh chilli content from 2 to 1. I find that just a bit too hot. But the onions, 8 ounces of them, have to be cut really thinly. And just look at the way I've done it here. I leave the skin on because I find it helps the knife to, it doesn't slip as much. So separate them out into rings like that, into a flattish dish. Put the seasoning over, which is a half a teaspoon of salt and a good dash of pepper and the chilli. Cut it very finely and use, remember to take all the little seeds and white bits out because they are even hotter than this. So flick that over, and a tablespoonful of lemon juice, which is about the juice from a whole lemon, and give it a stir every now and again and leave it for 2 hours, and I guarantee you'll be very surprised at how nice it is, onion salad. And now for the corn raita. This was first made in this kitchen by Nimi Singh from Nuneaton. The special flavour of this raita comes from cumin seeds, and here they are as you buy them from your shop or your supermarket. And kindly Claire is roasting some for me, and this is the colour they're going to be when they're finished. And the reason for roasting is that intensifies the flavour with lots of seeds and nuts. The flavour does improve once they've been heated and cooled down. Now the raita basically is some yoghurt which is flavoured. Now you're quite used to the cucumber one. That's the one that you get and grab for when your mouth is burning hot from a very, very hot curry. Now in the bowl here I've got 5 fluid ounces of natural yoghurt. That's the one without any sweetening or fruit in. Now to that I'm adding 2 ounces of sweet corn. Now this can be frozen sweet corn, which you'd have to cook very gently for 2 or 3 minutes and drain, but if it's the tinned one you could just put it straight into the raita. So 2 ounces of that, and stir it round, and a bit of seasoning, some salt and a bit of paprika, she says in the recipe. That's that dark red coloured pepper and some ordinary pepper. So we'll give that a stir around, and then we'll have the cumin seeds and give them a little grind. And if you haven't got a pestle and mortar, the best thing you can do is bash it with the end of your rolling pin.
That's a good idea.
Yes.
The smell is absolutely wonderful.
It comes that you actually smell it when you're doing this
you
too.
break it up.
Really hard, yes. So once that's done, you sprinkle it over the top of the raita, stir it in and let it sit in that for about an hour, and that flavour will percolate all the way through and give you that really special thing that I was telling you about. So that's corn raita. Well, thank you, Claire. It's been a very colourful day, all our lovely coloured greens.
It's been lovely and healthy with it.
Yes, they're not really greens now, they're all colours.
Multicoloured.
So multicoloured greens. Thank you again for coming.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you
It's
for
been my
having me.
pleasure too. Next time, my guest is going to be 13-year-old Julia Noon from St Anne's, who just last year took 2nd place in the Sainsbury's Young Cook of Britain competition. But from now, from both of us, goodbye.
Goodbye.